This is the mean, median, mode, and range test, and I just wanted to go over some of the highly missed questions. And so the first one we're going to look at is number 2. Number 2 was just seeing if you knew the definition of the measures of center that we had learned. And range, of course, was not a measure of center, so hopefully we did not get confused by that. We had to be picking mode, mean, or median. And your big clue word in number 2 was where it said they wanted to find out the most popular piece of data. And so as soon as you're looking for the one that occurs the most, then that is going to go with A, mode. Next up is going to be number 5. Now number 5 did require you to find the mean, median, mode, and range of this set of data that they gave you. So they gave you a number of cartons of eggs sold each day, and so there are 7 pieces of data that we're going to use, and this data is not in order least to greatest, so the very first thing we would do is go to our thinking paper and order this data least to greatest. Then as we find the mode, we can find out whether it's 24 or 25. When we find the median, we can find out if it's 21 or 25. And so pretty much we were just picking one or the other for each measure of center, as well as our measure of spread here, the range. And so the first thing I did was go ahead and write my data up here, least to greatest. And I want to make sure I have 7 numbers because there were 7 pieces of data. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I know I've got them all. The easiest thing to spot right away is going to be your mode, because the mode occurs the most. And so we would know that on our test we wanted to click the mode is 25. The next thing that we're going to do is find the median. And so we're going to work our way to the middle for the median. And this one was a pretty easy one for the median because it worked out perfectly to where there was 3 marked out here, 3 numbers marked out here, so we only had 1 left directly in the center, which made 25 also our median. So we would go back and click that the median is also 25. So far we've chosen both of those. Next up is our range, so we want to know how much our data spreads or varies. So we want to take the greatest and we want to subtract the least, and so we would have done 39 minus 9 and gotten a range of 30, and we would have clicked on range of 30. So far we would have chosen all 3 of these down the right hand side. Now the most cumbersome one would be the mean, or the average, so we're going to have to add all these numbers together and then divide by however many numbers there are, which in this case would be 7, 1 for each day of the week. And so if I was calculating my mean, I would type all of these into my calculator, 9 plus 17 plus 21, add them all up and hit equals, and I would get a total of 168. Then I would want to divide by 7 because there are 7 numbers in my set of data. Once I divide by 7, I get a mean of 24. And especially when calculating the mean, I tend to type that in my calculator a couple of times because you are entering a lot of numbers and you could easily accidentally miss a button or hit something extra on your calculator. And so it's always a good idea to type that in twice to make sure you get 24 2 times, just to ensure that you're getting the correct answer. So then we would have chosen mean of 24. That's it for number 5. Now we're going to go down to number 6. Number 6 wanted to know which set of data has a range, so that should have told you were calculating range, with the greatest variation. So some fifth graders get thrown off by that word variation. We had that in our notes for range. It just means how much our data varies or changes. But even if you weren't sure about that word, this tells you that you're calculating range, and then the word greatest should have made you think, okay, I'm looking for the one with the greatest range. Now, what is very tricky about number 6, and I watch 5th graders get tricked by this type of question all the time, is a lot of 5th graders want to grab the beginning and the ending number because they're like, oh, range, greatest and least. But if you look at this data is not in order least to greatest. So when you look at A, yes, 26 and 48 does happen to be the least and greatest number for data set A. That is not true for all of these though. So like for B, we're looking at 40 or 35 and 12. So you can see these are not in order. So I'm really having to kind of fish out the greatest and the least for each of these. Let me show you how I would set up my thinking paper for this. First I would use my highlighter to highlight the greatest and the least. So for A it is 48 and 26. So I would just write 48 minus 26. And I'd come back and do all my calculating in a minute. For B, I would highlight my greatest and my least. So I'm looking at 12 and my greatest would be 35. For C, I'm looking for 40 and 23. And then for D, I'm looking at 32 is the greatest and 12 is the least. So what I would do is I would highlight that on my computer screen while I'm in PowerTest. I know on here my highlighting doesn't stay, but keep in mind if you're doing this on PowerTest it would stay there, so you would be able to see the two numbers that you need for each problem, and you'd be able to easily record them on your thinking paper for each question. So I'm just recording what I would have highlighted on my screen. And then once I have them all recorded, I can do all my calculating at once. So I can type all of that in and get a range of 22, a range of 23, a range of 17, and a range of 24. And so as I'm looking at these ranges, I can tell that my answer is going to be D because it has the greatest variation or the greatest change from the greatest to the least. So my answer would have been D for that. Moving on to number 8. Number 8 was just a simple click and drag definition for mean, median, and mode. We are responsible for knowing that the mean is the average. That's your keyword that you want to associate with mean. Median is the middle, so we want to associate that with the definition. And then favorite is the mode, because if it's your favorite, it occurs the most. Really, the first two should have been giveaways, and then you would have had to have placed the favorite lunch food as mode. Number 9 was tricky in a couple of ways. So, number 9, they wanted you to find the median. And I will tell you the two biggest things that probably tripped people up on this question. 1, you can't find the one in the middle if you don't order these numbers least to greatest. So the first thing you should have done is order your data least to greatest. Then, once you've done that, like I have here, the other thing that made number 9 kind of tricky is that once you ordered it least to greatest, this was one of those questions where you got stuck with two numbers in the middle. You can't cross out a 21 and a 23, but you're also not allowed to have two medians. And so you had two choices when we were practicing calculating median. You could either create a number line that went from 21 all the way to 33, and then you would just have to continue crossing numbers out until you got to the true middle. And I'm going to try to squeeze these in. That was not the ideal way to do that. But I would cross out 33, 21, 22, 32. You could just continue working your way to the center from here. And you would end up with 6 crossed out on this side, 6 crossed out on that side, and your median is truly 27. Or the other way that you can calculate the true median of 27 is to take the two numbers that you're stuck with in the middle, add them together, and divide by 2. So if on your calculator you take 21 plus 33, you would get 54. 21 plus 33 would give you 54, and then you're going to divide by 2, which will also give you 27. So number 9 was tricky in a couple of ways. 1, you had to make sure you ordered your numbers least to greatest, and then 2, you had to know what to do when you got stuck with 2 in the middle. So hopefully that cleared up any confusion you may have had there. And then the last one that we need to look at is number 14. And 14 was really just the definition of a measure of spread. So we learned about 3 measures of center, mean, median, and mode. We said range was a measure of spread. So they've basically calculated the range for this question, or the measure of spread. And they want to know if you realize that the measure of spread is also called the range, or how much our data spreads from least to greatest. And so your answer for this one was D, because in order to find the range, you have to subtract or find the difference between the highest and lowest number of points. Fair share would have gone with mean, most often would have gone with mode, middle would have gone with median. All measures of center. But if we're talking measure of spread, then we want to calculate the range, which is described in choice D. So that is it for this test as far as highly missed. If I did not go over something you need on here, if you had any other questions, just let me know.